Good morning. Welcome to DCC Today. Happy Wednesday to you. And we're out on location again. Such a beautiful place. We don't really need to feature a photo of the day because we are the photo of the day this week. I'm glad you could be here with us. Announcements coming up for this week. Don't forget, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock is our summer celebration at the Cole Farm on West Squim Bay Road. And I'd encourage you to be there by 9:30 to get parked. So we can have all the cars parked by the time the service starts at 10. If you haven't yet registered online, go to dcchurch.org right now, find the banner there, and get yourself registered. That will be a tremendous help to us as we decide how to park cars. Also, there may still be some festival seating slots open. That's going pretty quickly. We can only have 200 people seated outside. But if you'd like to do that, if there are spaces still available, you need to sign up for that in advance, and there will be an area for festival seating for you to check in at. Now, there is a possibility, I mentioned this on Monday, that because our case count is going up in the county, we might end up getting the festival seating canceled. And if that has happened, we're just monitoring that this week. As of the time I'm recording this, it's still okay. If that's changed by the time this airs, we'll put a banner up right here below me to tell you that it's changed. But if you don't see anything here, then we're still good as of Wednesday. Either way, that service is going to happen. And so make your plans to be there Sunday morning by 9:30 with your car. 10 o'clock is the service. Great music. We're going to celebrate some people. We've got communion we're going to take together. There's the walk of remembrance. And then if you're going to watch online on Sunday, I've got to tell you, there's not going to be a church service online Sunday morning. We really want everyone to come out to Cole Farm, and we are going to record that service, and we'll put it online later, but there won't be a service online Sunday morning. What will be online is the baptism of Kelly American. We spent some time in the studio with Kelly and Ellen Barty acting as her translator. Kelly's first language is Chinese. Sharing her testimony, and then we got to baptize Kelly. And so we're going to have that video available online, and I hope you'll watch it. Also, I'd encourage you maybe to write a card of encouragement to Kelly. Just tell her that you saw her baptism, you love her, you're praying for her. That would really encourage her. And just send it to the church office, and we'll collect those and get them all to Kelly. That would be a wonderful thing that you could do for her. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, September 13th. We're going to start in-person live church services at the church. The service will be at 9 o'clock Sunday morning, starting September 13th. Now, you will need to register ahead for that. We only have room for about 90 people with the social distancing. The surveys that we did, that many of you turned in, are telling us that that should accommodate the people that are ready to come back to a service. But we need you to register ahead, and we will have the registration available on September 1st. So on September 1st, you can go to our website, dcchurch.org, and there will be a banner there where you can sign up for the service. We'll be using a pre-recorded music package. Because of all the COVID-19 rules, we just decided we can do a much better job with that. But it will be a live sermon. I'll be preaching at that service, and of course, you'll get to see people. So Sunday, September 13th, 9 a.m. will be our first in-person church service, and you can get signed up for that. If it turns out that we have a lot of people and we need to do a second service, we'll be announcing that in the future. But for right now, it'll be one service at 9 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, as with everything these days, we have to put in the disclaimer that that is contingent on us not getting pushed back in our phases. But right now, that's the plan. Hey, how about a verse for the day? This verse comes out of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. Paul says, "Now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known." Boy, there are a lot of things that I don't fully understand. Probably you've got those things too. But Paul says there's a day that's coming when we will understand. Most importantly, he says that we will then know fully, just as we have already been fully known. God fully knows you. He fully knows me. And there's a lot of comfort in that I am fully known. To be honest and transparent with God about my failures, because He fully knows me. He knows my background. He knows the things that have left me vulnerable. He knows the things that tempt me. He knows the things that bring me delight. And someday, when this life is over, we will stand in His presence, and we will be granted that kind of intimate knowledge of Jesus as well. That's a cool day to look forward to, isn't it? Well, in a strange turn of events, I am out here, and Jennifer is actually in the studio where she did our interview for today. So let's go to Jennifer. Jennifer, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Our guest today on DCC Today is Sandy Frykholm, and she has been gracious enough to come on today and talk with us about her writing ministry and especially one of the books that she's written recently. So, Sandy, I'm going to pass it right to you and let you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about when you came to DCC, maybe the ministries you do here.
Okay, Vern and I moved to Sequim in 1991, and we had lived in Alaska until 1988. I was born up there, and then we spent 2.5 years in Dallas, Texas with the Wycliffe Bible translators doing a short-term assignment there. And we moved to Sequim, and we're going to look through a lot of churches, kind of visit around and find just the right one for us. And friends of ours, the Shaftsmas, were attending DCC. So we visited DCC the first weekend we were here, and never left. So that was enough searching around, I think. And yeah.
I hear that a lot. Yeah. And so what, you and Vern have been involved in some of the ministries of our church. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, related to writing, I worked with the church newsletter for quite a long time when we had a newsletter that was mailed out. And I also have done just freelance writing in the community and did a lot of articles for the Gazette in the late 1990s on church news issues, a church anniversary, retiring pastor, kind of general church news for the community, and other general interest kind of articles, human interest stories mostly. And I really enjoyed that. I liked doing freelance work. I also did freelance writing for a business newspaper on the Peninsula that no longer is being published. And in the church, Vern was involved with youth ministry for quite a few years, and I joined him in some parts of that and went to Montana 3 different times when they were doing the mission trips to Montana. And worked with women's ministry for several years on the leadership group. And so we've just kind of stayed involved here and there.
Yeah, done a little bit of everything, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, and as you're when we came here, our kids were in like 7th grade and 5th grade and 2nd grade. So as your kids grow, you get involved in different things too. Right. And for a while there, we weren't involved in too much because we were driving to soccer games all the time. And yeah, then you have more time once they're out of the house. So
right. Well, more recently, you kind of have spearheaded up the Writers' Conference here. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we have done 3 writers' conferences starting in 2017, and Tim came to me and asked me if I could organize or propose some kind of an event to support the writers in our congregation, because there were quite a few, and I don't think he had in mind maybe what we came up with, but it was very successful writers conference that involved both bringing in speakers from outside the area, supporting local authors who really are maybe not in a position to go to a conference in another city, and it's very expensive to attend a writers conference of any size or distance away from here. So this was a good opportunity. I worked with Crystal Lynn all 3 of those years. Now this year, of course, everything's up in the air, but we have decided we just won't do a conference this year. We have a monthly meeting of Christian writers in the area, and we're focusing on kind of building that up to involve more people. So,
okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit about you as a writer. When did you feel like you first became interested in writing?
Well, I know it was a long time ago, because as I was writing this book that I recently published, which takes place in 1965, it's a memoir, I found a letter that my mom wrote talking about, on our trip, I received a letter from my dad that included a rejection slip from Reader's Digest. So I was 13 years old then, and and I know I loved writing and reading, and I would have been happy to be a writer right from that point on, but took a while to get
very
going.
Early in your writing then. Okay. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about your memoir that you wrote called The DriveIn 65. Maybe get a little bit.
Yeah, I have this cool book. My family, when I was about 11, my mom and her sister had lived in Alaska almost 20 years at that time, and they really missed their cousins in Long Island, New York, and one sister had moved back to Virginia and wanted to, they started brainstorming about a visit back there. My mom had not been out of Alaska in 18 years. And the idea they ultimately came up with was the DriveIn 65. And they said, we'll plan for 2 years. They brainstormed this idea around Christmas time of 1962. So we had 2.5 years of planning. And it just became, a project. They involved all the kids in planning, saving money, choosing places to visit. They figured if they're going to go, drive to New York and back, they might as well include a little bit more. And ultimately, they ended up with this kind of a route, starting in Alaska and going across the country, down to Florida, up to Colorado, where my aunt's husband's family was. Then we drove to Mexico City and came back on the wrong road. So we ended up going across Texas again and up the West Coast. And on the way back, our 22,000 miles. By the time we got to the West Coast, we're approaching 20,000 miles, and our van was feeling the pain. And a friend of ours.
How old were you during this time?
I was 13 that summer.
Okay. Wow. What a fun trip.
Yeah. And it was very eye-opening, because I had only been out of Alaska once in my life, and my brother and sister had never. We would see civil rights demonstrations on TV, which were prominent in the news, and we didn't know what people were dealing with. We didn't have any context for understanding that. And after driving through the southern states particularly, we had a lot better idea why people were willing to go out and stand in front of the police and, face the consequences of their rebellion, because they didn't have very much to lose. The poverty and the treatment of Blacks was just shocking to us.
Yeah. So you learned a lot of different things on the trip, sounds like.
Yeah, it wasn't just all Disneyland and the Grand Canyon. It was, you know, there were a lot of, the space race was in hot contention at that time, and the Soviets made strides early that year, and we had some notable accomplishments that summer. Those were prominent news items that we followed. And the war in Vietnam was escalating. That was one of the biggest years of escalation. I think we started 1965 with 20 or 25,000 military personnel in Vietnam and ended the year with almost 200,000.
Wow.
So that was a significant thing to our family, more than we knew at the time, because my eldest cousin, who was on the trip with me, was 15 years old, and I can remember my mom and aunt talking about how glad they were that their kids were too young to really be concerned about Vietnam. And ultimately, he did go to Vietnam, and two of my other cousins too.
Wow.
So
how long did the trip take from, I mean, the whole trip was how long?
We left Anchorage May 22nd and returned the last of August. So three and a half months.
Wow. You guys were
22,000 miles. Yeah, we didn't stay long. We stayed a week in Long Island and about a week in Virginia with the families, and then with my uncle's family in Colorado for a week. Otherwise, it was like overnight or a couple of days, and much of the time camping. We had a Chevy Greenbrier van. It's part of the Corvair series of vehicles, and we had rigged it up for camping with all our gear in it and everything. 3 little kids slept on the 3 bench seats, and you know, these kind of aluminum loungers that the 3 adults, my mom and aunt and my grandma, slept on. And people thought they were just crazy for going on such a long trip and into Mexico with no men with them. But my feeling was, there's 8 of us. Who's crazy enough to, you know, mess with this crazy crowd?
Yes. Oh, what an experience you had. I bet trying to go back and write this book then brought a lot of like good and probably interesting memories to you. So
it
maybe
was
talk about the writing of the book. How long did it take, and some challenges or things you found?
Well, I spent about 6 years working on it pretty steadily. My mom and aunt had always planned to write a book about the trip, and they made several false starts early on after we returned, and I was so fortunate. I wouldn't have been able to write this book if they had not insisted that Uncle Bill and my dad save every letter that they sent home. And they made a practice of writing almost every day. They wrote a letter or postcard, and I had this trove of material, not only the letters and postcards, but they saved maps and receipts, and a travel diary of my mom's, and they had an account book that recorded the cost of everything, you know, with gas at 30 cents a gallon. And
wow, 30 cents a gallon.
Yeah. I mean, there were some instances where all 8 of us would go in and have breakfast in a restaurant for $5.
Wow.
And we had, it's just remarkable to see the prices. We did, on the way back up the West Coast, spend a day in Disneyland, 8 people. And Mom wrote home that we splurged and spent $50 for all of us to go to Disneyland for the day. We couldn't even get one of us in Disneyland now.
Oh, I don't think you could even park for that much.
Yeah.
stories. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. Well, so tell me a little bit about are you planning to write more books in the future, or did this one kind of
Well, this one I wanted to write because it just has become such a legend in the family, and I began writing with the thought that it would be something primarily for the family. But as I wrote and contemplated more about the courage that my mom and aunt had shown, and their creativity in planning and making it work financially and getting us all around the country and doing so many things that we all wanted to do, I just realized that how much they had influenced all of our lives by having this trip, and it was an enormous influence. So I came to realize it was a bigger story than just this family fun trip around the country. And so I'm really glad I wrote that, but I've worked mostly on historical novels the last several years prior to getting started on this. And I would still like to finish those projects. I have two historical novels that are substantially, well, the stories are finished. They need a lot of work. They need revision and polishing up, and they're not ready for publication, but the stories are finished.
Are there, yeah. And so when you wrote the DriveIn 65, you used a pen name for that book, or I don't know if you've used that in the past.
I have not used that pen name before, and that is my birth name. But I have a lot of good friends who can't spell my last name. So I just thought, rather than making it a name that's just really hard to do in a search engine or something, I would use my maiden name.
Right. Okay. So your website is sandralynreed.com, and we'll put that at the bottom here too. So if people want to go check it out and see the book and just other things there, it's a really great website. So, well, if you maybe transition a little bit to other writers, because you have been a mentor, I think, for people that have been interested in writing. So maybe a word or two of wisdom for people that would like to do some writing, but maybe don't know where to get started. What would you say for them?
Well, especially if they're interested in writing a personal story like a memoir, I encourage just writing some things down, because usually when we think of a memoir, particular incidents or stories will come to mind, and we think of our life, or a memoir by definition is more focused on a theme or a narrower portion of your life than an autobiography. And sometimes people will want to identify the theme and then write to that. But I think that it works better for me the other way, writing incidents and stories, and the theme will become apparent as you write. The connecting threads through it become more obvious. So just begin. And I think finding a writer's group is really valuable, supportive group with some more experienced and some other writers who are willing to share their work with you, share what they've learned and in their writing process.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you have a group that meets. So
there is. It's called Olympic Peninsula Christian Writers, and there's a website. Not a website, a Facebook page, Olympic Peninsula Christian Writers Group, which has usually they're pretty small meetings, but there are people from a number of different churches that come to them, and riders with good experience. We usually have some time of sharing and then some kind of educational or, some lesson or instruction of one sort or other.
The continuing
and we're meeting actually next week on Thursday. We meet the third Thursdays, and we're meeting by Zoom these days. So if you find that,
we'll drop that information down here too in case there's people who are interested. But great. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for sharing everything today.
I'm glad to.
And it was very interesting for me to hear it. So yeah, well, I will close us out in prayer as we go out today. And
okay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, God, for this time and for Sandy. And I just thank you for her willingness to share with us today about her writing. And I just think that her story is amazing, Father, and just her willingness to share it with other people. It takes courage and bravery and patience and persistence to do what she did. And we just thank you for her family and their willingness to be adventurous and to get out there and just see the world, really. And so that's exciting. And I just thank you for creating that world and all that's in it. And just that we get the chance to have those exciting adventures that shape our lives. And I just thank you again for Sandy being here today, Father. And I ask you bless her. And Father, just bless our day today. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Great. Thank you so much, Sandy, for being here.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us this morning. We will be back Friday morning, and I think we'll be out on location again. And until then, I trust you have a great week and be blessed.